Hey everybody, back at it again with another Disarming Anti-Gun Arguments. Today, we're covering on one of my favorites, that the Second Amendment does not protect anything but muzzle-loading rifles, something that you would have seen during the Revolutionary War, something about around the time that the forefathers were creating the Bill of Rights, or the Declaration of Independence. Now, to best break this down, you need to think of it in a couple of ways. And that's that the Founding Fathers believed in natural law, that a person, when their life, property, or liberty is challenged by another person or entity, they can lash out in its defense. And remember John Adams when we talk about this topic. If I have no room to escape, or if I run and I'm pursued to a wall or into a corner where I cannot elude his fury, and I have no other way to preserve my own life from his violence but by taking his, there I have an indisputable right to do so, and should be justified in warding through the blood of a whole army, if I had power to shed it, and had no other way to make my escape. So it's pretty clear what they thought regarding natural law of self-defense and their property and their liberty. They believed that if you had no other way, you were up against the wall, or that also means liberty. Liberty is a little bit more gray, but if you think about it, they had their homes, they had their places of living, worship, business, and all that, and they were pushed to the point that that was threatened. That would be their kind of same idea of their back against the wall, and they believed that they could fight back with everything they had to defend that way of life, their own life, their family's life, and their property. Now, what often comes up when you get this argument is that they pointed things like the AR-15, the AK-47, advanced weapons like rocket-propelled grenades, and even things down to like the Glock handgun, right? A Glock is a simple handgun, semi-automatic handgun that carries a lot of rounds, way more rounds than would have been considered normal in the Revolutionary War time frame. And that leads you to believe that, well, yeah, they could never have expected that, and they would have found that this amount of rounds in your hand was something that the Second Amendment shouldn't protect. And that's where we get to the second part, and this is the most important part. The Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, is an acknowledgment of your inalienable rights. It's not that the bill gives you these rights or protects those rights, and that includes the Supreme Court, the federal government, your own local government. They're not protecting your right. If anything, all they do is try to ratchet it down and reduce it. But you have an inalienable right to that defensive item, to bear arms. And it doesn't even have to be firearms. It could be any arms. And the concept is much deeper than it is an inalienable for you to carry said weapon, said arm. The point is that even if they made the law, the inalienable fact of human nature is that they won't oblige the law. Up to a certain point, a certain amount of people simply will not obey. Yes, it's important to understand that if you have an inalienable right, a right that is provided by the very human nature of your being, that you can only push that and restrict it so much with laws. And the forefathers acknowledged that. That's why it's a protected right. It's not something that is tried to be reduced. You're allowed to keep and bear arms, and that law and that right should not be infringed. Because if it is infringed, people will disobey the laws. They'll go around the laws, they'll do things that they need to do to be what they feel is safe. And again, that's a human natural response. One of the most important things, though, to keep in mind when you think about the forefathers and the Second Amendment and advanced weaponry is that they had advanced weaponry. And I know this gets brought up a lot, and people make it a kind of tired argument of these very futuristic, hypothetical, not every man type of gun. And if you compare that to the Glock of today, right, they're not the same. Right? But you do have to realize that the technology advancements existed. They knew about them. They were involved in seeing them demoed, seeing them be used, seeing them be actively a part of government, right? When you're talking about the Giordani air rifle that could fire 10, 20 rounds in rapid succession without gunpowder of any kind, the Belton flintlock, which was a burst fire rifle, or even the simple pepper box. The pepper box was a multi-barreled firearm that you would cock and fire, and it had all kinds of different priming charges all around it to fire this gun, right? And they had different models of it, some that would rotate. Back then, not so much. It fired blasts of different shot. But these are not new concepts. The concept of firing more than one projectile in a shot, multiple projectiles, just projectile after projectile after projectile, quickly reloading and firing. These are concepts that are still in place today: semi-automatic, fully automatic, burst fire. But that is the same thing that people have been chasing since firearms have been created. So the forefathers knew of these concepts. They understood the gravity of changing technologies, because it's not that they had, from the time they were born to the time they died, all they ever had was muzzle-loading flintlock rifles. No, they had handguns, they had carbines, they had full-size rifles, and then they knew and perhaps even held, used, fired, whatever, these other advanced technology rifles. So they had a concept of things to come, and they knew technology was changing. So the fact that they, one, understand a human being's inalienable rights, two, the right of natural law to defend yourself, and three, knew that human technology was a changing thing. It wasn't finite, it wasn't limited, it was constantly growing. Means that they had a much better concept of the Second Amendment than most people do today. That you cannot block this right because it's inalienable. We will do anything we can to get access to the things we think we need to defend ourselves. And nobody can come at us and tell us, well, this is the smart thing you need to defend yourself. No, the human right is to keep and bear whatever arms they deem acceptable for protecting their life, their family's lives, their property, or their liberty. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I really do appreciate it. If this was interesting to you, please give me a thumbs up. And if this is something you'd like to see more of, please subscribe. This is an ongoing series. I'm trying to create a book that I'm going to be producing sometime here in the near future. And this is part of me just getting my thoughts together, and I'm transcribing these into the chapters that I'm then going to add more to and produce. So if this is something you want to keep track of and follow, please subscribe again. It helps me out. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, and I'll talk to you later.